Hello and welcome everyone to this Blender beginner series. You want to learn how to use Blender? Well, this is the video for you. We're going to get started with it very shortly. So blender.org, you can just go to downloads, works on all operating systems, and you can download it as a portable zip file as well so that you don't have to even install it, and Blender can run off a thumb drive if you wish. All sorts of stuff. So once you've downloaded and installed Blender, well, we'll just go over to Blender. So here we are. This is the default scene. And so how do you get around? Well, first we'll just talk about the 3D viewport. This is the 3D viewport, this area right here, okay? And you can change the different areas by going up to this tab. They all have this little button right here. And you can see that Blender is actually just broken out into these little panels, okay? So these are just areas. You can actually create other areas by right-clicking on the edge and doing horizontal split. And we can have two 3D areas. All right, so I'll just collapse that by right-clicking on this edge and saying join down. This down here is a timeline. So if you have animations like you say on frame 1, be over here, on frame 48, be over here, as you play the timeline, it will move across. But anyway, let's talk about navigating this viewport. So I have some hotkeys written out here for you, and we're going to talk about this top part first. So middle mouse button down will be orbit. So if you hold your middle mouse button down and then move your mouse around while holding it down, you can orbit. You can also see down here on the bottom left that there's this status bar, and you can see it says rotate view, and it shows the little mouse icon with the little square in the middle. That's telling you that this is rotate view. So that'll allow you to rotate the view around an invisible point. So essentially you can think of it as there's a little invisible point in the scene, and as you rotate around, you're rotating around that little invisible point. All right, next is panning. So it's middle mouse button down plus shift. So just like the first one where we did orbit, this one's gonna be plus shift. So we're orbiting around. Now let's say we wanna orbit somewhere else. You can hold shift and middle mouse click down and then pan that little invisible point over to the side. It'd be somewhere around here at this point. So now when we move around, it's actually orbiting around this position over here. So we can use the orbit and pan to move our center view around. So this right here is a light. So if I was to say move a little bit to the side and kind of center this from different angles, now I'm orbiting around that light. See how it's focused in the center there? And then this over here is the camera. So if I hold shift and pan it to the center of the view, and then maybe move to a different angle and then put it back in the center, that will pretty much center it up. So now we're orbiting around that camera. So go ahead and give that a try. Next, I'll show you zoom in and zoom out. It's again using the middle mouse button, but this time instead of holding it down, we just scroll. So scroll in and out, and that is a zoom in and out. So now you know orbit, panning, and zoom. There are a few other hotkeys I would like to show you for navigation, and they require a numpad. Now, if you don't have a numpad, that's no problem. You can go to Edit, Preferences, and go to Input, and then select Emulate Numpad, and this will use the numbers across the top of your keyboard. That way you can follow along. So let me maximize this now. So what are they? Well, numpad 1 is front view, numpad 3 is side view, numpad 7 is top view. Let's look at that first. So if I hit 1 on the numpad, it goes to front view. If I hit 3 on the numpad, it goes to side view. And if I hit 7 on the numpad, it goes to top view. Now, something else to note is that you can hold Control to go to the opposite side. So if 1 is front view, Control plus 1 will be the back side. If 3 is the right side, Control 3 is the left side. And 7 is top, Control 7 is bottom. All right. Now let's look at something else here. Toggle ortho and perspective mode with numpad 5. So what is that? Well, you can see right here the top left, it says user perspective. Perspective is when all the lines inside of the application kind of converge to create this perspective. Let me actually do a little better than that. They all kind of converge. So these would be the lines, or perspective lines. See how they all converge to this focus point at the end? Okay. So in perspective, that's what happens. It emulates how you see things in the real world. But when you press numpad 5, it will actually put it into orthographic. And what this means is that all the lines remain parallel. So those lines never converge. That's orthographic. And so what is this useful for? Well, what orthographic can be used for is lining things up exactly in the view. So if I go to front view and make sure I'm in orthographic by checking this spot up here, what it can do is allow you to line things up exactly. So if I hit Shift and then plus Z, that will toggle to wireframe. It's also right here. It's this first little button that shows the wire on the sphere. That's wireframe. So here we can see that everything is lined up. But if I hit 5 on the numpad, well, now you can see that we're in perspective and everything isn't exactly lined up. So when you're modeling and you need high precision, sometimes you might want to go to front view and have it in orthographic so that you can see everything perfectly lined up. More on that later, but for now, that is the main point of it. All right, so what else do we have? Numpad period, focus view to selected. All right, so just as we were moving around and panning and putting things in the center of the screen so that we orbit around those locations, okay, so I'm just orbiting around this. You can also select objects by left clicking. So that's a light, this is the camera, and this is a mesh object. But you can hit numpad period to focus the view on that automatically. And then you can zoom out a little bit. Sometimes it kind of zooms you in pretty close. So numpad period, and here we are. This is the camera. And I'm just kind of zooming out. It lets us move around pretty quick. All right, and I'll give you one more thing for the view. Say you're lost in space. You have no idea where is everything. Okay, if you hit the home key, it'll actually put everything in your scene into the viewport. So if you ever get lost, you can always hit home. And if in doubt, you can always also select here in the outliner. This is the outliner right here, as you can see. If you select an object here, you can also just select it, put your mouse in the 3D view, and then hit period. That will focus. So if we're lost in space, you can select the cube, put your mouse in the viewport, and then hit period, and that will bring you back to focus. So you can always select things here and then push period to refocus on them. Okay, so I assume that you downloaded Blender so you can make your own 3D models, do some animations, render pictures, that sort of stuff, right? Well, let's first learn how to manipulate objects in the scene. And by the way, that's box select. It's this tool right here. And you can click down and hold and select other versions. So select circle will let you select by drawing out this circle here. But I like to leave it on box select. Anyway, let's look at moving objects around. So we'll select the cube, just left click. And then let's use the move gizmo here. You can actually expand this panel a little bit if you don't know what it is by the icon, and it'll show you the words. If it's fully collapsed, you can hit T to toggle the panel as well. So that will hide and collapse this panel. But let's click on move and let's move this around. So there's an arrow for each axis. So you can move the object in one direction or the other. Just depends on which one you click on. But there is these little squares in here, and this will let you move it on 2 axes. So if you have the green and the red, this one will let you move it on those 2 right here. The blue one is going to be the red and the Y, so X and Y. Essentially, the square color is the axis that it will not be moving in. So if I click the red square, that means it will not move on the red axis. All right, so that's moving objects around. And I'd like to show you a hotkey for it. It's going to be G. And the reason it's G is because it stands for grab. So let's look at that. So say I go to select box and I don't have the move gizmo active anymore. What I can do is hit the G for the move command. But when I hit G, it just moves around like this to the screen. It doesn't have an axis like it did before with the move gizmo. So how do we constrain the movement to a certain axis with this tool? So I hit G to start the move tool. You can type in the axis. So if I want to move it on the X axis, I can hit X. And now it's constrained on the X-axis. You can actually adjust the value to be precise by typing in the value. So I could say 5, just type in 5 and hit enter. So that just moved that object over on the X-axis by 5 units. Next, I can select the light and say G, Z, 2. I moved it up on the Z-axis by 2 units. And actually, let's just go ahead and move this cube back to the center. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so there's two different ways that we could do this. Since we've moved this object in object mode, its orientation is now over here. Do you see this little yellow dot right here at the center of the object? That's the object's position. So we could clear that position to be all zeros. And if you open up this panel right here on the side, there's a little arrow. It'll open this up. You can also hit N on the keyboard to toggle that panel. But if you go to item on these tabs, make sure that you see this area location. That is the location of that little dot. It's called the origin. You can type in 0, 0, 0 to put it back at the center. Now I'll undo that and show you a hotkey that will zero this out. If you hit Alt G, that will clear the location. So Alt G clears location. So if I move it, Alt G. All right, so I'll just put this back and I'll show you something else. So if the object is over here again, there's this little thing in the center right here. You see that? It's called the 3D cursor. You can place that 3D cursor by shift right clicking and that will move that cursor around. You can think of this little cursor as a way of manipulating objects. So you could rotate things around this cursor by hitting period and 3D cursor, and now it rotates around that cursor. There is a lot that we can do with this cursor, but for now, I'll just set it back to median point. So hit period and then go to median point. But what we can do is hit Shift S and say cursor to world origin. So that puts the cursor at the 0, 0, 0 of our world. Now we can hit Shift S and say selection to cursor. All right, so now that we know how to move objects around, get around the viewport, what else? Well, let's look at rotate, which is R is the hotkey. There's also an active tool right here. So you can click on that and it gives you this little gizmo and you can rotate. And if you right click while you're rotating, so I'm holding the left mouse button down while I'm doing this, you can hit the right mouse button to cancel that. So if you're moving it around, you can right click to cancel. That's just a little tip. But again, I use hotkeys pretty much exclusively. So I'll move this out of the way. No, I'll leave it up just so you know it's there. But the hotkey is R, just like I showed here, R, rotate. So R, and it rotates. Okay, so just like before, it's rotating arbitrarily to the screen view. But if you hit X, it will rotate around the X-axis, Y for the Y-axis, and Z for the Z-axis. And just like before, you can actually type in a value. So I'll right click to cancel this rotation, okay? And let's start fresh. R, Z, 45. So I rotated this cube here 45 degrees on the Z axis. All right, that's pretty much all that we need to know for the rotation. And if you hit N to go to the properties panel, or this panel here, what we need to look at is this section here, rotation. You can see the value that I typed in. And just like before, you can zero it out by typing it in. And again, just like before, there's a hotkey to do it for you. And that's Alt-R. That will clear the rotation. So G is for grab, and that adds to location. R is for rotate. And Alt-G clears location. Alt-R clears rotation. Hopefully I said all that right. Okay, let's look at another one here, and that's going to be scale. All right, so scale. S key is scale. And right-clicking will cancel, and S, Y will scale on the Y-axis, X, Z. And of course, like before, there is another widget that you can use. And this little arrow, I don't know if you can see that. I'll zoom in. And you can zoom in on these by holding Control, middle mouse click, and drag up and down. A little bit of a secret there, but you see this little arrow? That means that there's multiple options. So just like select box had circle, we'll actually set it back to the box, but scale has scale cage, and this will allow you to select different points and scale along those points. Now the usefulness of this depends on what you're doing, but it is there if you would like to use it. Anyway, I'll set it back to regular scale, and there you go. And by the way, if you select this white ring, it will scale everything from the origin. It scales in all axes. If you select the blue, it will scale on the Y and X axis, just like the move gizmo. Similar behavior, except for instead of moving, it's scaling. And by the way, if you scale something and you want to clear the scale and go to the side panel, the N key, you see that there's the scale here. You might want to put 0. You can click and drag across those to do multi-fields at once. And I'll hit 0 and hit enter. Well, the object disappeared. Well, just know that scale, the default is 1. It's a multiplication, okay? So it scales the object. So if you put 0, it multiplies the scale by 0, which means the object scale is 0. So default is 1. And this right here, you can also do the same as the other ones, like when we move something and then hit Alt-G to set the location back to 0, you can hit Alt-S to set the scale back to all ones. So let's look at duplicating an object. But first, I'd like to tell you, all these hotkeys I've been mentioning, like for the viewport, they're also here under view. So view, viewport, and here they are with the hotkey associated. And that numpad period one, that's called frame selected. So there, that one, like when we hit numpad period to look at the camera, there you go. That's the frame selected option. And that's all under view. But let's look at duplicating an object. So we're going to go to object and Shift D for duplicate objects right here. So Shift D, and that'll start to duplicate. Now, what's going on here? I hit the duplicate object and it's moving around. So this is a two-part operation. One is that it duplicates, and then now it goes into the move command. So treat it just like another move command. So I can hit X to move it over, and we'll say 5, enter. The hotkey was Shift D to duplicate. You can see object, duplicate objects is Shift D. So if I hit Shift D, now it's in the move command, and now I can hit Z, 5, enter. Just like when we hit G to move. Basically, this command is called duplicate and move. So Shift D, it goes to the move command after it duplicates. And I'll say X, -5. There we go. Just showing you how to duplicate objects and move them around. But let's talk about edit mode. So far we've been moving things around and manipulating objects in the scene through object mode. Now, what is edit mode? Well, each object has data associated to it. And so what does that mean when an object has data associated to it? Well, first off, these are all objects because they can all be placed in the scene. So they share common information, such as a transform, the location, rotation, and scale. So all of that is a commonality between these, and that's why they're all types of objects. But the things that make them unique is the type of data that's associated to that object. So a camera is going to have data associated to it, such as the field of view and the perspective, and so on. A light is going to have its energy, whether it's a sunlight, an area light, spotlight, or point light, which it is a point light in this case at the moment. And the mesh is going to have mesh data, vertices, edges, and faces. So edit mode, what that does is it allows you to edit the geometry or the associated data. So I'll click on edit mode, which is up here at the top. Object mode lets you move that transform around and do parenting and animating, while edit mode allows you to edit the associated data. All right, that's edit mode. It's also tab to go into edit mode. Now, do know that some objects don't have edit mode. So if I select a light, you can see it only has object mode. All right, and I'll show you this last little thing over here. See this window on the side? This is the properties panel. Okay, so right here is the properties panel. These first few, this one's for the active tool, so box select or cursor or move, that sort of thing. This is the render, this is the output, this is the view layer, scene, world settings, this is collection properties, but right here it says object. So I have the cube selected and this is the object. Now, all of these, when I select them, all have the same object properties icon, this little orange object. That is the associated or the commonality between these. They are all objects, so they're all going to have this object data, which is going to be their transform, the relation, visibility, that sort of stuff. Basic stuff for the viewport and its location in the scene, etc. But what's going to change is this data, this green spot. So when it's a mesh, it's going to have this little triangle. You're going to have vertex groups, shape keys, and so on. If it's a light or a camera in this case, you see the little camera icon? That's going to be the data. Even if you hover your mouse over it, it says data. So this is the object. This is the data associated to that object. And like I was saying, it shows perspective, orthographic, panoramic, custom. There's all sorts of data associated to the camera. And if you want to change the light properties, just select the light, go down here to the light data, and now you can modify the light data. But again, the object properties here is where the location is. Okay, so let's go back to edit mode. Now that we sort of understand these are all objects and there's different data associated, let's actually edit the data for this cube. So we'll go to object and go to edit mode. Okay, so here we are in edit mode and everything is yellow. That means it's selected. So everything is selected at the moment. You can tap the A key to select all and double tap the A key to deselect all. Now, I'm going to hit A to select all, and you can also deselect all by just clicking in the empty space. So left click right here, empty space, boom, it will deselect all. And that is under the select menu, so A for all. Okay, now, what is going on here? Okay, so a mesh is composed of vertices, edges, and faces. So I'll show you how to select those and manage your selection set, because the tools will operate primarily on the selection that you have. So up here, you can pick between vertex, edge, and face select. So those are also 1 on the top row numbers. That's going to be vertex select. 2 is edge, 3 is face. So that's what I did a second ago. I selected the vertex, then I hit 2 and went to edge select, selected this edge, and then I hit 3 for face select and selected that face. Now, one edge is always going to require 2 vertices. So if you select both of those vertices, it will also select that edge. So if you click on the vertex and hold shift to append select, you can select the other associated vertex on the edge that you want, and that will select the edge. If you want to select the face from vertex mode, you have to select all the vertices that compose all the edges around the perimeter of that face. So to select this face from vertex mode, you would have to select all the vertices. And that would select the edges, which the edges all together, create that face. Or, if you need to go fast and you just know that you're going to be selecting faces, just hit 3 on the top row and then select faces. Okay, so it just depends what you need to do. All right, so now that you understand a little bit about selections, which I'm going to show you one other thing. If you want to select multiple, you hold shift, but say you have this and you want to deselect this, but not to unselect these, just hold shift and click. So shift click will toggle append or depend or remove from the selection set. So select with left mouse button for one and then shift for multiple. Okay, and I just hit A a couple times to deselect all. All right, let's talk about some tools so that way we can do some modeling. I'm going to bring over the hotkeys. So right around here, I'm going to show you the extrude, knife, and loop cut. And also the grab, rotate, and scale works in this mode as well. So let's actually just go to face select, grab that top face, and hit G. So now I'm moving it. I'll constrain it with the Z key for the Z axis and do 4. So I move that top face up by 4. All right, now let's look at extrude. Okay, so extrude will allow you to extrude a new piece of geometry. It depends on what you have selected. So if you have a vertex selected and you press the E key, it will extrude that vertex and give you a new edge. If you have edge select mode and you hit E, it will extrude that edge and give you a new face. If you have face select mode and hit E, it will extrude that face. Okay, so we've created a bit of a mess here, I would say. So what I'll do is hit A for everything, and I'm going to hit X and say delete vertices. So we deleted all of the vertex data in that edit mode. Now the object is still there. We just deleted all the mesh data inside of that object. So basically the object's there, and then we just deleted all the vertex data. So let's do Shift A or Add menu and do Cube. So Shift A is this menu right here, but just a little faster with the hotkey. So there's a fresh cube, okay? And you can go back to object mode, and it's just the object, and then you have the mesh data in the object. So here we are. Okay, just giving us a basis here. Okay, so we have the mesh back. Now let's look at actually modeling this a little bit. So I'm gonna hit A to move this up. So I'll say A to select all, G, Z, 1. I'll move it up. So now it's nice and on the floor there. And let's actually create a sword. So I'll select face, and I'll just move this face up a little. So G, Z. And what I'm going to do here is extrude this face. So I'll say E and move this up some. So I extruded and then moved it along that blue axis, the Z axis. Now I'll select this face and shift click this face here. Okay, so I have those two faces selected. I'll hit E and it's going to want to move around like this. So what I'm going to do is right click to cancel. But if I hit G, you can see that those faces are extruded, but they're just kind of sitting on top of each other. So you always want to be careful that you don't do that. But what we're going to do is hit S, X, and scale those faces away from each other. Okay, looking good. And now what I can do is select this top face here and say SY, or sorry, SX, and kind of give this sword a little thickness here. And we'll extrude this up. So I hit E key, and now I'm just extruding it up. I can scale this in by hitting SY, kind of thinning that blade down a little bit. This blade might, it doesn't look too sharp. Let's call it a practice sword. We'll just say this one's made out of wood. It's for kind of, fighting the homies in the woods or something. All right, so I'll hit GZ, move this part down, and let me show you the bevel command. So I'll hit 2, or just select edges here, and I'm going to select these edges around this side here. So I have those edges selected. Shift Z will put you in wireframe mode, so you can select through actually. With box select, you can just drag like this, click drag with box select mode, and just select those edges. Now, if you're having issues, just make sure that you're in edge select mode and that you have this box right here, select box, and then you can select right through it. Now I'll hit Shift Z to go back to solid view, and it's also right here, wireframe and object, or wireframe and solid view. But if we hit Control B, okay, Control B, that will bevel. I believe it's this one right here, bevel. If you want to use this tool, you can. It just puts this little gizmo, and then you can drag like this. But I'm just going to hit Control B for the hotkey, and there we go. So kind of round that off a little bit. Now, when we beveled, it sort of created some odd geometry right here. So how could we fix this? Well, what I'm going to do is select all of these edges, or these vertices. So Shift, click those. Go to the backside, Shift, click these, and I'm going to move them down. So what we can do here is a little bit more complicated. I'll give you one more tool for this video, and that's going to be this snapping right here. So what we're going to do is click this menu, and we're going to set it to vertex, and I believe that's all we need to do. Now, you can turn this on, and this means it will always be on, the snapping. But if you hold Control while you're moving things, it will actually turn this on momentarily while you're holding Control. You have to be in a tool, though. Like, you can't hold Control right now and do anything. You have to hit G to move, and then you can hold Control. So see how that little box is showing up? Okay? That is the snapping. And since we're snapping to vertices, okay, what that means is when you hit G and then hold Control for snaps, it's going to snap to vertices. But what we want to do is just move this vertex down. So G, Z. I'm going to constrain on the Z axis, and I'm going to hold Control to snap it to this edge, or this vertex here. And if we go to object mode, hit Tab, there you go. There's our sword. Okay, it might not be the best sword in the world, but it's a first model, and it's something to behold. You could even maybe modify this further, and I'll just leave this open, but let's go in here and select faces. So I'll select this face, and you can hit Control B for bevel. There we go. All right, I'll show you another tool before we get out of here. So I'll show you two more, knife and loop cut. So let's say we want to add in some loops here. So you can hold Control and hit R and just release the hotkeys once you see this ring, okay? And you can scroll on the wheel, the mouse wheel, to add more rings. Let's add three rings, and it wants you to slide around. You can just right click for the slide around part. And I'll do that one more time in case you didn't catch it. So Control R, and then scroll to add some extra loops. I think I did 3. And then just left click to select that, and then right click the slide to cancel that part because we don't want to slide it afterwards. But there we go. And I just hit a quick double tap A to deselect all. And there we go. We have some edge loops. So what that lets us do is have more geometry to modify. So I'll hit Shift 7 to go to wireframe and just sort of box select this. And now I can scale this in with the S key. I mean, I'll scale this one in a little bit. I'm just, in wireframe with the box select, and I'm just selecting and then hitting S. All right. Maybe even we could, hit 3 or just go to face select and, extrude this down with E and just kind of bring it down and then scale this in. All right, there we go. Looking pretty good. Now I'll show you the knife tool, this one. It's K. That's the hotkey to start it. Okay, so I'm going to go to front view. So 1, and I'll hit 5 on the numpad. So 1 on the numpad for front view, 5 on the numpad for orthographic. And let's go into wireframe, Shift 7 or Shift Z. Sorry, I have a little dyslexia. I say Z and 7 a lot. Anyway, S's and 6, you name it. Okay, so we'll start the knife tool. We'll hit K. So I'm in the knife tool. You can see the little knife and this little little icon here, this little blue dot. What we're going to do is draw in new geometry. Now, if you look at the status bar, there's all sorts of options. And what we're going to do is use cut through, which is C. And what that is, when you toggle it, see it will change. I hit C. See that changing down there? It highlights it. C will cut through the whole geometry. So when we make a cut here with the knife tool, it will slice all the way through to the other side. So what I'm going to do is, just on this about right here, just click and then draw out a line, click and draw out a line, and I just clicked again. And now like this, I'm going to hit enter. So I'm going to select this face. If you have it on vertex select or whatever, just select around this area and hit period on the numpad. That will focus us in. And then I can go to hit, numpad 5 to go back to perspective. And we're kind of focused, just when you're a beginner at this, the hardest part is really going to be about navigation and getting that honed in. So just continue to use the numpad period key to refocus and make your life a lot easier. But what I'm going to do here in wireframe view is select these faces, and I'm going to hit X to delete those faces. All right, I'll go back to solid view, and you can see what's happened. We've cut out that shape, and then we deleted the new geometry that was inside of it. All right, so what we can do is actually create the faces in here. So I'll hit 2, or just go to the edge select. I know when I say 2, I'm saying 2 on the top row. It gets a little confusing because there's a 2 on the number pad, but 2 on the top row for edge select. I'm going to select this edge right here. And what I'm going to do is hit F for face. It'll generate a new face to the open area, and then hit F again. So now we have this little cutout, like a notch in our sword. Okay, that looks pretty good. And what about one other operation? So I'll go back to the front view and do orthographic, so numpad 5. I'll hit Shift Z, and I'll start the knife tool one more time. I'll hit K, and I'm going to hit C for cut through, and I'm going to put the cursor right around here. I'll start the knife tool here. I'll click, and then just go up to the top and click about there and hit enter. Okay, now this might be a little more confusing as to what I'm making, but essentially I'm going to make this sword a little bit wider in the center like this. But I think what we need to do is do a knife across this section here. So I'll say K, C, and I'm just going to put one right around here and hit enter. And what I'll do is just select this edge, this one at the top, and this one on the back side, and I'll hit S, Y, just to kind of scale it out. So it's a little more, rounded, I suppose. And we could select in vertex mode. So we'll just select, vertex or one on the top row and select these two. Maybe scale those in and select this one, shift select this one, scale those in. Maybe make it look a little sharper. Who knows? Maybe this thing's like a medieval butter knife or something, but I guess you could scale it in more, get it a little sharper, but anyway, we'll save it for another day. So I hope that helps. And, until the next video is out, just continue exploring these tools over here. Okay. Those will help you. And then also, if you're in like face select mode and you have a face selected, there's always going to be this face menu here. Okay. So you can always go in here and try to, explore these. If you hit, if you go into edge select mode, you can go into edge and see what this is all about. And there's vertex face, this vertex menu. And a cool thing is you can hit Control V to open that vertex menu at any time. So Control V is the vertex menu, Control F is the face menu, and Control E is the edge menu. And I'll go back to object mode. Now, before we get out of here, I'm going to confuse you on something a little bit. Okay, so what I'd like to show you as a last little tip here, if you want to place an object in the scene that you've modeled, use object mode. That's where you place objects in the scene. So if I want to put this sword over here, move it in object mode, okay? I'll hit Alt G to clear that. But what happens is if you move it in edit mode is that you're moving away that mesh data relative to the object. So if I go back to object mode, see the location is all 0 now. If I was to rotate this, it's going to rotate around its origin right here. So if you're doing, animation or exporting to a game engine and you need certain things to be in certain places, just know that you're going to be having to deal with problems if you're moving things in edit mode just for placement. You want your object's origin to sort of represent the object's origin on the mesh. So don't move things away in edit mode just to be moving and placing things like this. Now, if you're making a building and there's a big floor plan and it's not, there's various cases, okay? But generally speaking, you want your object origin to be representative of the actual object's origin. So try not to move things away like that if you can, okay? So let's go back one more. And you see how it's like spinning where it should now when I rotate this? So the animation on that would be a lot better because it's rotating around the origin. The origin's in the handle there. So if you put it over here, now it's doing this motion, okay? So just be aware of that. And one other thing is if you want to scale things, so you model it and then you come back here and scale it down in object mode, that's okay in some cases, but again, you might want to just scale things down in edit mode. And then when you go back to object mode, the scale is still all 1. And certain cases that might really matter is when you export to game engines or you're using modifiers. There's just a lot of cases, but as you progress, you'll learn these things, but I'm just giving you a few really important tips now. And anyway, they're best practices. So just try to, navigate Blender with these best practices and you'll just be that much better, that much faster. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next